Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to call the planning board meeting of October 16, 2018 to order. Thank you, everybody who has come tonight. If you haven't signed in yet, please make sure you do sign in. It is a little after 7. I apologize for starting late. First item on the agenda is the Master Plan Steering Committee update and the review. So, George Pember's one of our designees for the planning board. How's it going with steering committee?
Thank you very much. As we were discussing before the start of the meeting tonight, we had a meeting down at Algonquin High School recently, and they were prepared to break us into 8 discussion groups. We had 8 tables all set up, but we only had about 32 or 33 people show up. So that wasn't going to work, so they consolidated us into 4 tables for discussion purposes. What we did is we looked at the overall theme or vision statement. Critiqued that, we looked at the goals, and critiqued them, and came up with some action items on the goals. It was a fantastic meeting for those who did make it. It was really one thing after another that kept happening, interrupt us to say, all right, move on to your next thing. We weren't ready to move on to the next thing. So obviously an awful lot of ideas were flowing.
Right.
The next meeting of the next planning steering committee will be the 1st of November. And that meeting's going to be in the library. So kind of shifting around different locations for the meetings and hopefully get something convenient for everybody. I'm hoping that a good number of the 30 people that showed up at the last meeting will also show up so that we can get as much input as possible to go through the process.
So is that 30 citizens who weren't already on one of the committees? Or it's 30 total, okay.
Including the steering committee.
Okay,
Not all the steering committee members were able to make it something conflict.
okay.
So, but it was disappointing, but it was exciting because there was so much going on. It was
Right.
a lot of fun for those who were there.
Right. Well, okay, that's fantastic. And you feel like you guys now have a good vision moving forward from your perspective?
Oh, heck no.
Okay. Still a little fuzzy?
Plenty of stuff.
Okay.
Lies and
Okay.
try to reformulate some words and change some things around. So we're not there yet.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right.
we just got input from a resident today of rethinking the vision statement, and
Okay.
so people are
Interesting.
emailing feedback.
All right.
So basically though, at the 4th, if I can just add in, the whole purpose of that night was to sort of, agree or disagree or change whatever, what the vision statement, and Anthony and Carrie, participated that night. So there were definitely, some tweaks made to it, and the consultants are gonna have that, for the November 1st steering committee meeting. And then, the goals were, the main purpose that night was to go through the vision statement and then the goals. And there, for all of the people that were there, like George says, everybody that was there wanted to be there. So that was, not that people don't want to be at a meeting, but I mean, they were there because it's something outside of their regular board meetings and so forth. And so everyone participated. A couple people said to me at the beginning of the meeting, they're like, Kath, I'm just gonna be here for, the presentation of the, kind of like the overview, and then, I'm not gonna do the group activities. I'm like, oh, and they ended up staying, and they were so glad that they did. So that's, I kind of geek out about that people are really into the public part of this. So the goals were pretty much all agreed on, that, these are our goals going forward. And the recommendations is now where the real work is gonna come in.
Right.
And at the November 1st meeting, we're gonna go, again, back through the goals and the vision statement, and then spend the majority of that meeting on the, starting to look at recommendations as to how do you enact those goals. So that's what will be the brunt of the November 1st. So that agenda hasn't been posted yet. Again, it's a steering committee meeting, and we did have to move it, to the only room that I could find, which Anthony had suggested was the library. And at first I'm thinking, God, that room is just so big, but it's, we'll just take up whatever part of it we will, and, whoever comes. have to move it over there, just, because of, other schedules here, so.
Okay, well, that's great.
At 7 o'clock?
Yeah, 7 o'clock, and the survey is still, while we're on camera, the second survey is still up and available. We were going to close it this coming Friday, but we're gonna close it next Friday, the 26th. So
Okay.
people still have time to, if they haven't, and, the participation on that survey too has dropped off, which is sort of normal, you know, because everyone thinks that the second survey, it's just human nature, you know, they think it's sort of like a follow-up of the first survey. Well, I already did the first survey, why do I have to do the second?
Right.
Well, we're gonna have like 2 more surveys, so we're hoping people will
Okay.
stick with us, and, because each survey is on different topics. So we had about 650 participants the first survey. So far, we just have a little over 200 for the second survey. So we're really hoping that people will, you know, we're gonna re-advertise it, you know, put another splash out there about it, and hoping people will, you know, take that survey.
Right.
So,
Okay.
and I still need to get some up at the senior center, okay. To get some paper copies up at the senior center.
Great, excellent. Amy, anything to add?
No.
Nothing. Michelle?
No, but I do think it's worthwhile after the November meeting, if the board takes a look at it, because often we've talked about things about changing zoning or things, and Kathy said, well, why don't we wait for the master plan? So I think it's worthwhile to take a look at it and see if there's pockets that are missing or not being addressed, just from a zoning perspective.
So by that point, the vision statement and the goals will be done
By November 1st.
by that November 1 meeting? Okay,
Yeah.
that's fine.
So maybe we can look at it at our other November
Our
meeting.
next November meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, your next meeting is after that.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
That's fine.
But we're gonna have another meeting on the master plan after the November 1st meeting, right?
Oh, steering committee
Yeah.
meetings? Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
you still
Yeah.
have a few of those left. But
Yeah,
as far as like, you know, we then need to, you know, move on to the rest of the master plan.
right.
You know, so what we're hoping is our goal, we just had you know, we have conference calls every 2 weeks. So, today, you know, setting up the agenda for the first, you know, again, the first will be to finalize the statement and the goals, and then really get into the recommendations. That's the real need of how those goals are gonna be achieved.
Right. So I think it'd be good to put it on our November meeting.
That's fine, we can do that.
And then maybe by then, whatever comes out of the November 1st meeting, we can all take a look at it. And if we have a concern that there's something that's missing, the committee can address it.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir. Nice to see you again. We'll let you know when the next meeting is. All right, right on time. Next on the agenda is the continued public hearing for 267 to 281 Southwest Cutoff Special Permit Site Plan Approval and Special Permit for Dental Office.
So while Vito is setting up his boards for tonight, or board for tonight, I just wanted to reiterate what you have in front of you and also things that were emailed to you. You have, I believe what you have in front of you is the revised landscaping plan. Then there is just the building layout, the internal building layout. The planting list, I think was part of your packet, and I know I mailed these to you, like, in 2 or 3 different emails, it just didn't come in to me. And then also, there's just a real quick summary, that actually Dr. Maheven had put together, as far as, you know, the information, you know, the information that you had talked about at the last meeting, to be reviewed, at tonight's meeting. And also, Conservation Commission is all set. They issued or are about to issue
They issued it,
Okay.
issued the order.
the order of conditions. So,
Great.
so they've been through conservation, they've been through groundwater, which Craig will talk about.
Okay. Okay.
Just wanted to update you, that we pretty much covered everything. But like I said, one of the issues left off was groundwater advisory, so we used them the other night, last week. All set there. I wasn't able to open the letter, but I sent the letter today. Oh. But I know you sent the letter today.
And-
I sent it to both of you?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, you got it.
Sure.
It's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Outstanding item, the groundwater committee was chemicals. Dr. Mohican had said at the first groundwater meeting that he did have some chemicals, even though his application said he didn't think he did. And so he put together a list of types and quantities. That was submitted, groundwater committee reviewed it, recommended a containment cabinet with a minimum of 30-gallon capacity. Dr. Mohican and the committee talked about where that would be located within the building, which is partly why the floor plan was submitted. There's a sterilization area and a laboratory, and he wasn't sure it could be in either one. Depending on which one, he might have one cabinet, a little bit taller, or two smaller ones that would fit under the counter. Either way was acceptable. The materials that he submitted, the corrosive resistance cabinet with the locking mechanism and the model that was specified by his engineer was acceptable to the committee. That's what they're recommending for approval. The letter talks about the flexibility, whether it's one or two cabinets. The applicant did indicate that there would be a digital X-ray machine, so no chemicals regarding X-rays, and the committee recommended that be part of the approval for future tenants or owners of that property as a dental office.
Sorry, can I just interrupt you for a second? I'm sorry. Do you all have, I know I emailed it, but do you have copies? I don't know if Deb made copies for you to have in front of you tonight.
Yep.
You do?
Of
Okay.
our landscape.
Post-Gator?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
That's this.
I just wanted to-
This one, that one, yeah.
There was also a discussion about the amalgam separator, which was a point of discussion at the previous meeting. There was based on another applicant that went before groundwater and ultimately the ZBA, there was some discussion about maintenance contracts. Dr. Mohican explained that in his practice, he does his own maintenance, and he explained exactly how it's done, exactly how simple it is, and that he forwards that container with the amalgam that has been taken out of the waste stream, if you will, and sends it off to the manufacturer, then sends him a certificate. So one of the conditions recommendation from the groundwater committee is that that procedure is fine as long as Dr. Mohican submits copies of those certificates, whatever ones he gets throughout the course of it each year to the town for confirmation.
And that's the exact condition that Fred just referenced is one that we've used before with another dentist that wasn't before this board, but was before the ZBA. So we'll use that same word.
Okay.
The other recommendation, the rest of the letter is carried over from the previous memo that I had written to you for your last meeting regarding conditions about the stormwater as they plan to be implemented.
Okay.
So they're just repeated and belts and suspenders, that I gave you last month's letter and this month's letter.
So aside from groundwater, any other concerns from engineering?
I have no other concerns than those that I went through last time.
Okay. Okay. You?
A couple of things that we left off last time was the landscaping plan, providing a list, providing,
Yep. We got it.
new planting plan. And then we talked about adding an additional light near the driveway entrance. So I was had a lighting plan done, which shows that additional light. I don't know if you guys, secret emailed in.
Yeah, the lighting plan, the original lighting plan was, reviewed, was provided to the design review committee and reviewed and approved by the design review committee.
Yeah, I think we just wanted to add that one light near
At the entrance.
That was it.
And that wasn't there before?
Right. Yeah, that was something that your board wanted to see.
Right, and it's that's the one that's now right near this where the sign is located. That's the new one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's one you had requested at the last meeting.
Yep, at the entrance. Perfect.
So the light's gonna be there, and then your digital sign's gonna be there too? Okay.
Yeah, 'cause I think you had talked about trying to get a street light there, but just the process to get an actual street light out there.
I just have a quick question, is it as tall as a street light, or is it
No,
what's it look like?
It's one of the typical site lighting lights.
like a lamppost
They're-
light?
They're about 20 feet or so.
Yeah, we have.
Or at least I know in the industrial developments, when they put them up, they're about 20 feet.
Okay.
But, so I'm not sure what,
It's up to you.
Does it just shine down?
yeah, like the intersection, their driveway entrance. Yeah, I think they're typically about 20 feet. Kind of like industry standard.
I think the only last thing was snow storage, just calling out locations on the plan. So we did add that to the plan. I don't know if
Is that indicated on what we've been given? The exterior?
We showed it on the site plan, we revised those, we just added, we showed it up front, we took it off of right here,
Okay.
since we wanted to talk about no location back here. We'll bring up plans from Here's the revised date.
Yeah,
We were gonna send it in and then we're waiting on
I don't
groundwater.
think we have it. They put it on the left side of there and then down to that.
So we just added. The spot right here, took it off of there. We also labeled that they have an optional putting it up in the parking area too. We can kind of discuss last time.
Because you have an excessive amount of spaces,
Excess
right?
spaces.
Okay. Okay. Amy, any questions?
I was just gonna ask Fred if you had a chance to look at the snow removal area and you think it's sufficient? Cause we don't have it.
I had discussed it with Vito, and,
Yeah.
I just got the plan.
Right.
And we talked about it, but we sat and discussed where it would be, as long as it's as reflected on the plan. The, previous letter that I had sent indicated that we would request a final plan to be reviewed prior to the building permit being issued, so that both engineering and DPW could make sure that all the utilities were as required. So we'll cover it at that point.
That's the new condition that we're adding to all the decisions.
Right. Yep.
Okay. And so if they find it's not enough space, say the parking lot's full and it has a huge snowstorm, then
took it
they
out.
have to truck it out?
Yeah,
Truck it out.
they have to
Okay.
take it off-site. Yeah, which they indicated at the last meeting, that is, as any applicant does, that, because obviously it's gonna affect their business, so they will take it off-site.
Okay.
And they're not putting it up where all the new trees are being planted, or all of his landscaping is?
No.
It's hard to figure it out from here.
No.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions, Amy?
No.
Michelle? Nope. Anthony?
So just keeping up with the amalgam separation system, is there any mechanism just to, I'm not saying that it wouldn't be done, but every year that we're sure that's being maintained, or?
Well, it is OSHA protocol for me to do it, so mandated by the board of dentistry, so do it every year, submitted records I've done every year.
Okay.
The container itself is, it's kind of interesting. It has like this bio container on the exterior. Oh, yeah, you have one?
You wanna-
So it has,
Wanna
it's
see
a,
it?
it's kind of neat. It's kind of cool. And all that kind of stuff interests me.
I think I mentioned at the last meeting, just because I found this interesting, the company that makes this, that has the patent on this is located in Norfolk.
Oh, well.
But these are not shipped to Florida.
But you get the certificate from that company,
Exactly.
the manufacturer.
So the maintenance of this is pretty much analogous to changing out your AC filter every year.
Mhm.
So, you can do it yourself, to get someone to do it for you. And what it is, comes in this kind of box. It's capped. Take off the caps, obviously. This screws into the unit.
Yep.
Take out the old one, and seal it in the bag that comes with it, and then you're done. And about a month later, you get paperwork from the company, and that you're in compliance, whenever audited by the board, I have that as well. Comes up a shipping label. Takes probably 2 minutes to check and 5 minutes to ship it. And that's the whole process.
Cool.
That's all.
You good?
Yep.
All right. Karen?
A lot of my questions were answered. Thank you. This is very well organized. The one question I do have is, do we have a list of the chemicals that, so is it something that can be shared or?
Oh, it's available at the engineer's office.
Oh, okay.
It was provided
Look
to
at
the
it.
groundwater
Yeah.
advisory committee as part of their requirements.
Okay, and is there anything in terms of disposing of the chemicals that is of concern, or? I'm just wondering because we got a cabinet, but I don't know if that means like, what kind of chemicals are we talking?
For storing the chemicals on a daily basis. And then, disposal is, can't be in the waste stream. Take it offsite. What's up? So I guess most of the stuff is stuff that is on the way in the trash, a daily operation, and where this particular, operation will be connected to town sewer, there's not the same level of concern as there was on the previous, then just, have to indicate what's the ZBA, and they have an offsite something.
Right.
Goes to the sewer system, and what they're disposing of in the sewer system is not, banned from the treatment plant.
Okay.
So it either goes in the amalgam separator or it goes.
Great, that's it. Thank you.
That's it? Okay. Any questions from any members of the audience? Yes, ma'am. You just please state your name and address.
Lisa Castelli, 13 Maple Street. You're coming in a little bit late on what you've been doing for the past few months, I guess, in terms of the building. Is this only questions for the chemicals, or can I ask you about the whole building process?
It's about the site plan, the whole approval process. That's what's in front of us.
So my question is, the signage and having all these new electronic signs coming down the pipe, will you be eliminating the old one that you had for the other property, or that stays, and then each person comes and gets that as well, and now we start having all these electronic signs going on? So what's gonna happen with that sort of?
So is your question, is the sign that's permitted for its current location staying and a new sign going up there, so that we'll have two signs?
Yes.
The sign, you're taking that sign down and shipping it up the road?
We'll use the same time.
Okay.
And what happens if down the road, when we get a padlock and stops having these electronic signs, what happens to those? To the ones who have them are grandfathered?
They're grandfathered. Yep. Anything else? No, good? Yes, sir.
My name is Henry Skolanicky, 72 Crestwood Drive. What's the traffic pattern there? I know the new traffic light is working, and then we have one there. How close to either traffic light? Is there gonna be a problem getting out and cutting across traffic?
Vito, you want to answer that?
Sure. You have, the existing traffic light was up here.
Right.
So you're, about 600 feet away.
Right, and there's a new one further down the
Yeah,
road.
that one's down this way.
Okay.
So that one's at least probably, about 8 to 9.
Okay, but do you see any problem with your customers,
No,
your
'cause
patients
that
pulling
backup
out?
shouldn't reach down to here.
Okay.
as far as getting out.
All right.
Anything else? You good? Anyone else have any other questions? Anything else from the planning department? Okay. Does any-
We're all set, you have the,
Is it, is it in the decision that he's to remove that one sign to the other? Is that part of the decision, or is it
We
just?
can make it part of the decision,
Okay.
but that's the
Yeah.
sign he will use.
Okay.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yep.
It's what he's representing. So is there a motion from the board?
So moved.
You have to make it though.
I make a motion to accept the site plan with the conditions as submitted. Anything else I have to add to that?
Yes, so we will, the motion to approve the application
Oh, there's
for
that.
special permit, site plan approval, and special permit for the
office.
dental office with the conditions from Groundwater Advisory Committee and from the town engineer, and with the additional condition that the sign currently at the present office be the sign that's moved up to the new office, And was there one other thing?
Do you have to include the Conservation Commission conditions?
The what?
No, they have to.
Conservation Commission?
We don't have to
That's
include
Okay.
that.
completely separate and parallel to you. But we'll add in well, actually, the design review committee didn't have any, I mean, everything had been worked out, and the memo from last month was just that they had approved it.
Okay.
So there aren't any conditions.
No additional conditions,
So
okay.
town engineer and groundwater conditions, and that, you just have to say that, Carrie.
And town water and conservation commission conditions. Did you have something?
Just to be clear,
Town engineer and groundwater.
Town engineer and groundwater.
There you go.
just to be clear,
Yeah.
the signage
Yeah.
is different what's going up at the new site than what I have right now.
So you're removing and disposing of that sign?
Moving,
No, and it's getting slightly enlarged
modifying it.
by 4 square feet.
Right. Yep.
Height,
That's,
height,
you were in front of the ZBA for that.
Right,
Yep.
DBA already cleared that.
Yep, yep. Yep. Is it the same physical structure, you're just adding to it, or you?
So I'm increasing the height, so I'm changing the, foundation bowls.
Yep.
So the bowls that anchor it, and then I'm also changing out the LED board. So.
Okay.
So I'm increasing the size of the LED board, that's it.
Okay. Okay.
Does that change that condition then, with the sign there?
I got it.
Okay.
Yeah,
It'll follow through. Don't worry.
Okay.
The sign. Yep.
being moved from,
Yep.
Okay,
Okay,
And I'll reference the ZBA decision.
okay.
okay. So there is a motion on the table. Is it seconded? Anybody?
I'll second it.
Amy seconds. Any further discussion? No? All in favor?
Okay.
Aye. Congratulations. You are done. Thank you, Vito. So when I make motions, I always just read what's
Oh, yeah, yeah,
there.
yeah.
So just, it's approve the, whatever it is. So in this case, it'd be the special permit for site plan.
And then plus the conditions.
And then the additional conditions are as modified by. It's a big special permit, site plan. So, but now that we have the conditions, in all of our decisions, that everything is gonna be, the building, will be subject to town engineering. Bill has to file a set of plans. So that's always gonna be part of our Okay, consideration of minutes, 8/21/18. I'm not done reading that little novel yet, so we can't do those yet. So, 9/18/18. I know,
I haven't even, no, we have to hold on these.
you haven't read those yet? No. Okay, so minutes aside till next week, next meeting.
Unless everybody else has, and you want to take a minute? Has everyone else read them?
Has everyone else read the
I have.
September
I have.
minutes? Amy, have you read September?
I didn't finish them, but I did start, yeah.
Okay, well, we have to defer August, so we can defer them unless you guys want to take time and do it now.
They're not long, it's only 8 pages. Want to take a few minutes? Have you already?
I did read them, yep.
You guys? Okay.
Well, I'll say goodnight.
Good night.
Thank you, Fred. Have a good evening.
Yeah.
Are we considering August as well as September?
I've read 3 pages of August.
Okay, so we're not doing August.
No, I've got 10 more pages of August to go.
Gotcha.
I don't know, because I haven't seen it yet either, so, we will get to it, I promise.
Okay, I have a feeling what you have, I'm supposed to have. I had someone different set up the room, but I don't have any of my material for tonight. So I think she put it out on the counter and people thought it was for the public.
Sad.
Um,
Do you want
so
mine?
That's why I, bid on the agenda. So that's why you don't know what you have.
You want them all back?
No, it doesn't really mean anything at this point. I mean, there's no date, there's no, but I think think that's what happened, as I'm sitting here looking for my material, I'm like, I bet she put it out there by mistake, and people picked it up.
And run the line. Highlight it.
I'm good. Are you almost? I'm good.
You good?
And Amy's almost done. After you approve these, I do have a question, though.
About those?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's fine.
okay.
Give it a change.
No. Oh, I was curious.
If you don't expect too much, you might not be let down.
What?
It's from a song.
Okay, I'm all set, yeah.
You good down there?
I'm
Okay.
good.
Do you have any changes, Amy?
No,
None. Do you have any changes, Michelle?
None.
Anthony, do you have any changes?
No.
Okay. Carrie, did you have changes to these? Neither did I. So, is there a motion to approve?
Make a motion to approve the September 18th, 2018 minutes as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Kathy, can I ask you a quick question on the minutes? Last page, it says in response to a question from Ms. Gillespie, that would be me, about further investigating the possibility of using transcribed app. Ms. Jubit indicated that she feels strongly about having a board secretary and would not want to eliminate the board secretary, which we don't want to. But have we looked into it at all, or? I mean,
I've asked Debbie and, the, other admin clerk in our office to take a look into it.
okay,
So I don't know where they are with that. I mean, I don't think that Elaine has not indicated any, she likes taking it off the tape,
okay,
so, but I did, tell them about what Carrie, the information Carrie had given us, and that they were gonna look at that. They looked at Dragon, but Dragon doesn't work. They've tried Dragon. And there's a couple other, I think, apps or whatever, possibilities out there.
right.
But as far as Elaine's concerned, Elaine likes doing the minutes off the,
Watching the videotape? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I mean, she does a good job.
No A&Rs, no lot releases,
nope, I don't have any of that, no bonds tonight.
bonds, 2019 town meeting. So, this I think may address your question. Amy,
yes,
my guess is that what's in front of us is from you.
right.
So, what are we looking at?
Okay, I had 3 things that I wanted to bring up for town meeting this year. The first one in my folder talks about hazardous waste facilities. And I would like to talk about having them cited in industrial and also using some of the verbiage from Shrewsbury and Hudson and other towns that have citing for hazardous waste site facilities. Because I know in our bylaws, if it's not specifically permitted, then it's supposed to be prohibited. But according to the state, hazardous waste site facilities are exempted. And
Exempted from what?
that they have to, if you have nothing in your bylaw, or even if you do have something in your bylaw, you have to allow a hazardous waste facility that has a site assignment to be cited in the industrial zones. So you have to allow them. But they do allow conditions on existing, they allow conditions, let me see, I have to find my paper where it was. A town can apply reasonable conditions on construction or operation of a facility. So when I looked at Shrewsbury, they cited their hazardous waste facility, and then they had extra conditions. So it wasn't just regular site, the special permit conditions, they added extra conditions.
Is that from chapter 111? That permission?
There's a whole bunch of things mentioned. It's chapter 111, it's 150B, 21C. There's a whole bunch of
Well,
them.
150B
And we do have a
exemption.
pamphlet on exemptions from the state, so if you want to read that. But my concern is for the town, if it's not cited somewhere, and we don't have any conditions, then when they come in, if they go to industrial, then they can just, use our smaller amount of conditions, where other towns have added all these extra conditions. And I gave everybody a copy.
So here's what I'd like to do.
Mhm.
I'd like to actually be able to read these.
Sure.
So why don't we take them, review them, be prepared to discuss them next time.
Right.
Okay.
And I don't know if Kathy, if you have that exemption from
I have
Central.
the non-conforming book from CPPC, but I don't know about
I have the exemption one.
the exemption one, Amy, but I mean, I'll check into that.
I have two, I could give
And
you a copy.
also, I mean, just in general, I mean, this is something I've never been involved in, this is usually Board of Health. So one of the things that, these just came in today, so I'll circulate them, if this is something that the board wants to pursue, or at least just to start to have a conversation about whether you wanna pursue this or not, but, I can circulate this with staff and the appropriate staff who would work on this. I'll talk to, the Board of Health Director, probably the town engineer, and probably the DPW Director. I know Shrewsbury's, because I live there, Shrewsbury's was, in reaction to a soil remediation facility that was gonna come into town. And so they, so a bylaw was put in place for that soil remediation. So I think that's what this speaks to, Shrewsbury's in particular. I don't know who else you had in there.
I had Hudson too.
But, and DEP, I mean, this is all governed by DEP, so.
Right, I was gonna say DEP has to first give a site assignment before
I'll
you
check
can
with
even,
DEP. They may even have simple language,
right,
that the
okay.
town should adopt, so.
Okay, so that, we should have enough time between now and the next meeting to take a look at this and, give it some thoughtful consideration.
Because it says right in the paperwork too, once the site assignment's assigned, it's too late to go back and change your zoning. So you should have zoning in place
Yeah,
before the
it's
site assignment.
probably similar to filing an application.
Right.
Can't,
That's why I just
Can't
wanted to
unravel
make
it.
sure we were protected best we could.
right, okay. All right, number 2,
The second one, I have, get it? Let's see, talks about non-conforming uses. In our section 708-020, we talk about non-conforming uses in our town. And all towns have different definitions on how you want to define it. But,
page 2 is blank, is it supposed to be?
Notes.
no, but I only had 2 pages, so if you have a,
Well, I have
Oh.
a page 2, that's blank, I have a 3, a 4, and a 5.
Yeah. I think
So,
it's just, yeah,
okay, so I just printed out my own.
okay.
It's really just one page and then examples.
So would page
Okay.
2 have been
Page-
Ashland?
Yeah, page 2 would be Ashland.
That must have,
Yep.
I don't know what page, is there anything on page 2?
No, I think it just probably carried over on your
Blank.
Word doc. Sometimes.
yeah, examples start on
Maybe there's a
3.
blank page in there.
Yeah, it's a
So
blank
this-
page.
So mine, I only had one page and then examples.
Okay. So this seeks to amend something for the ZBA, a ZBA procedure?
Right, for the non-conforming uses, if you want me to read the definition, I can.
Well, let me ask you a question. Has
Sure.
does ZBA have any idea that you might be trying to change one of their procedures?
No, but we can discuss it with them if we want. But I find it's going back years, non-conforming uses in certain towns, they actually state out they would like to try to get it conforming. Like, the whole purpose of non-conforming to non-conforming is allowed to something to be grandfathered in, but then if the use is changing, you want to bring it to conforming. And a lot of towns write that in their bylaw, and ours just says change from one non-conforming use to another non-conforming use, which really just leaves it wide open to any interpretation. where a lot of other towns, right, change from one non-conforming use to another less detrimental non-conforming use. And my first sentence was, instead of where Northborough says change or substantial extension of the use, we would write, the Board of Appeals shall encourage extensions, alterations, changes to non-conforming structures, and uses towards a greater, if not complete, conformance with the provisions of the zoning bylaw, and to reduce the degree of nonconformity. I just feel with our zoning bylaw, the way ours is so vague, it leaves it wide open, and I know from certain,
Just to, and again, Amy, I haven't read these, but just, as you're saying, it's wide open. You always have to go back to, you know, in the zoning bylaw, the special permit criteria
right,
that the zoning board of appeals
Right.
and you have to, you know, adhere to.
I have to be,
So, I mean, there's, you know, that criteria is very clear in the zoning bylaw.
well, it says substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood, which can be interpreted any way. Like, even some of the towns define substantially more detrimental. What is substantially more detrimental? Because if you have 5, 6 people on board, that can mean anything to anyone. And I go back to the Indian Meadow Golf Course. We were a golf course, Indian Meadow was a golf course, which is passive recreation, but that was gonna go non-conforming to a commercial use of a commercial baseball facility, which really shouldn't even have been entertained if you were trying to make it back to conforming.
So my initial take
Yep.
is I don't have an opinion one way or the other on this from a planning perspective, but I would want to hear from the ZBA first as to how, because this is their purview, and they know this, we don't ever utilize this bylaw in what we do here. And I understand that it's part of zoning and therefore it comes before us, but we are now going to impose something on them. And I'd like their input on it before we as a board decide we're gonna change their structure or their considerations. That's my take on it. I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but, you know,
I just, yeah. it just
I
could be-
understand what you want,
Right.
and I understand why you want it, and I'm not saying I disagree with it.
Right.
But that is an entirely different board's procedure, and it's their purview, and they are better positioned to be able to say why this change would be good or perhaps not good than we would, because we don't do it all the time like they do. So I really think that we have to give the ZBA the opportunity to weigh on it before we start formulating a bylaw that's gonna affect them and only them.
Right, but as being a resident on the other side of it, I could see how it played out. And I've talked to a lot of residents since the 4 years ago, that the intention was try to make it more clear. So if you're a resident or you're a neighbor, it's more clear that you're protected.
Okay, I'm not
Right,
saying that that's not the case.
right.
Right, I'm not. I'm just saying that if we're gonna do something, ZBA should weigh in first, because we're affecting their board and what they're doing, and their considerations. You know, certainly, what I'm sure you're not trying to do is give them the signal that they're not doing a good job.
Oh, no,
But if we just go ahead and change the bylaw and the way that we expect them to do things and the considerations we expect them to make, that is very well the signal that we're gonna be giving them. Especially if we don't invite them to first review and understand what it is that's trying to be done and participate in the discussion to the extent that they want to.
okay.
So I think it's gotta go to ZBA first, and then I am happy to keep it on the agenda and just see sort of where it goes.
So, and then, if I could just make a suggestion, I think you have a good selection of communities, but I'd also want to know what Marlborough, Shrewsbury, and Westboro have with regards to this, because they're neighboring communities. And then, like Teresa said, if you keep it on the agenda and it's a worthwhile discussion, we could always have a joint meeting with them if they feel like it's a worthwhile discussion.
Right.
We've done that before when we did zoning.
That's what I was gonna ask. What is the forum that we actually work with them? Do we try to get on their agenda at the next meeting, or do we just try to schedule something?
Well, Amy could certainly, Kathy, you wanna answer that? Would Amy bring that to their meeting,
Well,
or?
I would, a couple of things. I mean, just like if someone wanted to come on your agenda, I would want it to be, I would wanna know that the whole board that wants to come to be put on your agenda is behind what's being put on your agenda. So I don't necessarily, I mean, Amy, I do the agenda, so Amy could certainly ask as an individual to go talk to the zoning board of appeals, but is she representing the board? You know, I mean, I think it's all too early for you to even know, you haven't even read this, to know whether or not this is something you wanna pursue. So, I mean, it wouldn't necessarily be, you know, again, Amy could go as an individual. The board doesn't really have like a discussion, like a old and new business sort of on their agendas to just have open discussions. It's just not how that board operates, but can certainly check with the chairman and, you know, see about, you know, putting you on, you know, for an upcoming agenda, Amy. Or if it's something that, you know, this board wants to wait until, you know, you've taken a look at this, and if it's something that you wanna pursue, you know, then it would be, you know, someone from the planning board speaking on behalf of the planning board.
I just don't want to accidentally give the ZBA the impression that we're babysitting them, or that we think that they're not capable of making the right decision, you know.
I mean, I can.
So, I don't want, we have, well, at least three potential zoning changes that we've got coming up, as well as master plan and other stuff, and then regular applications, so I don't wanna overwhelm us with something that ZBA may very well turn around and say,
Okay. Well, what I can
we're not-
do is
we're
at
not
their
on
next
board.
meeting, is I can, because I talked to them about zoning, because they, you know, they may have zoning, you know, amendments that they wanna bring forward too. So it's an ongoing discussion on both boards, you know, leading
Right.
up to town meeting. So I can bring this, I can share what Amy needs to put together, for their next agenda, and I can just, you know, review it with them.
And I don't have a problem with it going over, going to them under a cover letter from the board, and I'm assuming none of the board does either, saying that we're contemplating this, but we'd like
Yes,
you
yeah.
to weigh in first.
Yeah.
You know, what are your considerations as a board on this, and, you know.
I only added it this year because it's been on the back burner since I joined the board 4 years ago. I think I talked about it when I first started and it got pushed off. And then we had a lot of other things. We had marijuana, we had a lot of big zoning issues. And a couple weeks ago when we realized we, you know, didn't have a lot going forward next year, I thought, well, this is a good time to bring it up again. Not that I feel that the ZBA is doing a bad job. I don't think they've had any non-conforming permits, applications since then. But it's always been on the back burner, so I wanted to bring it back.
And I'm not adverse to it moving forward, I just
Right.
wanna
I
make
just
sure
wanna
that we're doing it the right way,
Right.
so that we have, because honestly, if you wanna get this passed, we
Right.
need to have the support of that board, and if we don't approach them first and allow them the opportunity to weigh in on it, then there's a chance they're not gonna support it, because they're gonna think we're trying to spank them, and we're not, you
No,
know,
not,
so
definitely
it's-
not. I'm just hoping it makes it
it's-
easier for them too.
Right.
Not, you know, it's more
So-
black and white.
Okay, so is the board okay with Kathy sending over a letter under our letterhead, just saying that we're contemplating this and weigh in? You guys good with that?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Let's do it that way then.
I read the copy that you sent earlier, it seems to be the same, and I am in favor of this in general, so I would support that as
Yeah.
well.
Okay, well, we'll do it that way and see what they,
Their agenda's already been posted for October, but I'll send it to them in the meantime anyways. and
Okay.
we'll go from there.
that's fine.
Hopefully you can, I don't know if I should add a little memo that, you know, we really aren't trying to
I'll put a cover memo on.
step on the toes.
Oh, no, yeah, and I think if you do it this way, they won't feel that, like that. I think if you don't do it this way, they will.
Okay.
All right, and what is the last one?
The last one had to do with the electronic signs that we've been talking about.
So is this proposed change to the bylaws?
Yes, and I wanted to discuss the proposed change, because I wanted to discuss taking out the EMS electronic changeable copy signs on Main Street, downtown, Business East, Business West. Just because being part of the master plan, everybody talks about it being a classic New England downtown, and if it ends up all lit up like Las Vegas, you're really gonna lose that fast. It's never gonna go, either stay as classic New England or go closer to being a classic New England. And if you really look, especially in the downtown, there's only probably one sign with the changeable, and they'll be grandfathered in. And this bylaw's been around for 4 years and no one's done it. But I think now that they're starting to pop up, it might spread. And when it does, then you start to hear from people going, oh my gosh, where did that come from? How did that happen?
Okay.
So one of
So-
the things that, you started to discuss this at your last meeting, and one of the things that I said that I would do and I've started to do with the building inspector is to, take a look at what, industry standards are, take a look at, how our bylaw, should be changed. I was hoping for some, maybe, I don't have anything to provide you tonight, but, maybe get a little bit more clarification on, if you as a board, and I'm not asking you to take a vote tonight, but I mean, again, the process typically is, we discuss an idea, or, you bring up an idea and sort of give me the parameters of what you're looking at, and then staff will draft, a bylaw, and then you've got the bylaw in the context of, how you see it in our zoning bylaw, and then that's kind of what you fool around with, massage, and then, eventually what we have going for the public hearing is what, how it will pretty much appear in the warrant for a town meeting. So, so based on last month's meeting, that there was, there's kind of two, or at least two trains of thought that I had, that do you as a board, and if you wanna discuss this tonight, or you wanna wait till your next meeting, but, if you want an outright ban of these, to not allow these message boards, right now, we call them changeable copy. I mean, we had gone through, talked to various towns, and that's how we came up with changeable copy at the time. So if you don't wanna allow that, in any zoning district, that's one bylaw to write. If you want to continue to allow them in some zoning districts, but not, some but not others, that's another bylaw to write. Or if you want to allow them, but put more, teeth into the bylaw, where do you want to allow them? And then, we can go from there as staff and put together, what we believe, based on conversations with you, and the industry standards, would best accomplish what it is that you're trying to accomplish. So I guess that's what you first have to get at, is
And-
what are you trying to accomplish?
And so I sat here thinking that maybe we should do a straw poll, like just sort of feel out, like, are either of you able to say this evening whether you would be looking for an outright ban, relegating it to specific districts, or any business type district with specific conditions? Do you know what you'd prefer?
I'm mostly interested in Route 20, not so concerned about industrial or Route 9, but I looked at Southborough and I looked at Weston, for example, and they don't even allow backlit signs.
Right.
And I think, and honestly, I think that would be aesthetically something I'd like to pursue as a board.
So you looking at an outright ban?
Yes.
Okay. Carrie?
Unchangeable or back?
But in the
It's just
industrial
on the-
district, Anthony?
What's that?
In the but allow them in the industrial district?
Industrial is fine.
Okay, so allowing it in industrial.
Industrial and Route 9 corridor.
Okay, highway business.
Yep.
That's right, that's the Route 9 corridors, highway business, right? Okay.
My preference would be ban except possibly highway business. Yeah,
Okay.
which is Route 9.
Yeah, that's Route 9,
Yeah.
for the most part. Okay.
I just wanted clarification, you're talking about changeable, not backlit signs, right?
No, I'm talking backlit as well.
Oh,
Oh,
wow.
you're talking both. Well, all right, so just
Wow.
for this purpose, let's only ask about the changeable, electronic changeable signs.
Yeah.
Okay,
Same answer?
same answer.
Okay. Same answer for you?
Yes, for electronic.
Okay. Michelle?
I'm into fine tuning it, editing, changing the bylaw.
But would you want to see an outright ban on the changeable electronic?
No, because I just
Limiting
think,
it to industrial
yeah.
and highway business?
I mean, the reason you don't see it is they're so expensive. They're $15,000 or $20,000. They're very expensive.
Right.
That's the reason why you don't see them.
Yeah, but you realize that pricing is gonna come down dramatically, very quickly.
Right.
So,
I just feel like some of the ones that are out there have had free reign, and the regulation is so loosey-goosey that, like, the illumination or the messages or things like that are part of the problem.
Would you be okay with them on Route 9 in highway business? or-
Yes.
And
Yep.
how about in industrial?
Yeah, I'm fine in industrial. I don't think you'd ever see them industrial.
No.
Probably
That's
not.
why.
That's why it's okay.
So the other, and again, as you said, Teresa, this is a straw poll. So
Yeah.
Michelle, you're saying just allow them where they are allowed now, but the bylaw needs more teeth and more definition.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
Just to clarify, industrial includes Shops Way, right? So all the, is that industrial?
That's the funny thing about Shops. Is yes, it's zoned industrial, if you looked at the zoning map, but when they went for their various variances and special permits, they were asked to be, as part of that process, they were asked to be treated as highway business. So their signs and the size of the signs and, relate to highway business zone.
Because it's like an overlay. So we'd have to think of, if an overlay came into an industrial, how would you
Yeah.
handle that?
I mean, if I could just,
Yeah.
magic wand the zoning map, that whole plaza should be zoned. It should be changed to a commercial district. And that is one of the things that, we haven't talked about entirely, like fully at the master plan steering committee, but when we get into the zoning meat of that portion, that's one of the things I've already talked to the consultant about, is that we need to take a look at something like that. It just doesn't make sense.
Can I also say to the board that the schools are now using interchangeable signs, which I think we need to take in, if we're going to eliminate them, do you want this eliminated from the schools? Because not every school is up to it yet.
But I think they're exempt as
Are they?
I think town properties are exempt from.
Oh, they
those.
are?
That's what my
Okay.
understanding is.
Well, the location of where a school can be located, that's the exempt part. But like schools and churches, daycares, they do need to follow the bylaw.
Okay.
So for signage, all that type of thing, they need to follow the bylaw. Now, but the ironic thing about the schools is that they're in residential districts. So it's really a whole, exception that they have.
But Framingham with their sign bylaw exempted civic organizations and churches and schools.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So
in
they-
Framingham, though, it's not a zoning bylaw. You just have to remember that, whole different animal.
Oh, because it's a city?
It's not a zoning bylaw.
No, it's-
No, they took it out of the zoning bylaw.
Oh,
And they have it
So-
separate, it's a whole sign
It's a
bylaw?
general-
It's a general bylaw.
oh, okay.
Not a zoning.
Yeah. But they have to follow it. All the businesses have to follow it like it is in zoning bylaw?
Right, that's why they took it out of the zoning bylaw, because in zoning you get grandfathered. If it's a general bylaw, you're not grandfathered. So they have what's called the sunset clause, and that's where I don't know what Framingham's was, but say from when they adopted it, maybe it was 10 years. So within 10 years, all the existing businesses had to conform to the new bylaw. I don't know when Framingham's was changed, I just know that that was a big move for Framingham's, was to take it out of zoning.
Okay, I found it attached to the zoning, but maybe they pulled it out.
Amy?
Yep.
Outright ban, specific districts, or
I mean,
modify what we
I'm okay
have?
with highway.
Highway
Yeah, and
business?
if everybody wanted highway and industrial, I'd be all right with that.
Okay.
I just think business, like, not only Route 20, but Business West, because Business West isn't even Route 20, right? It curves up
West Main
Southwest.
Street.
Yeah.
West Main Street, so I was
I actually have
focusing
another,
on Main Street. and
another
West-
question about the changeable. Don't gas stations have to change it as their prices change?
Gas stations have a lot of exemptions that,
Okay,
I'm not well versed on, I can talk to Bob about, but
okay,
they have, there's a lot of things that they put up that in Massachusetts, they don't have to conform to sign bylaws. For like advertising their property, they do, but the inspection stickers, the price of the gas,
okay.
and I think there might be a couple other things, that those don't fall under, local jurisdiction.
And even though Framingham isn't a zoning bylaw, I attached it, and they seem to find all those little things that weren't excluded, like, they included gas stations are excluded, And because it's Framingham, they have like drive-throughs for restaurants, so those were excluded. They excluded a lot.
So, Michelle, would you be okay with allowing the the electronic changeable copy signs in only industrial and highway business moving forward, if we were to do a zoning change?
I guess so. I'm the minority. What would you vote for? Did you say your vote?
I did not.
Oh, we'd love to hear your vote,
I,
Madam Chair.
honestly, I would ban them out.
You don't
I
like them?
can't stand them.
Okay, well, I guess I'm the minority,
I'm
so I had to
just-
join the game.
As the chair, I'm just trying to form a consensus here to
okay.
find
We'll
out whether,
form-
like,
yep.
what the extent of
Yep.
your passion is for Route 20 and allowing
I
these
will
electronic
say
changeable
that,
copy signs.
I would not, I would be opposed to not allowing, I mean, I think you should have backlit signs. I would definitely be opposed to that, if we were going forward with
Oh,
that.
yeah, we have a lot of them in town, too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be something that I think we'd have to have a serious discussion about. But
Right.
this, we've had 3 of them, each one has been different, and it's, so,
Okay.
I'm not opposed.
Amy, are backlit signs covered in this, or are we just talking about electronic changeable copy?
I just started with electronic changeable copy. I didn't talk about backlit. But if anybody else wants to,
But you did
they
have
can.
one thing in here that you want to change the hours of illumination.
Right, well, if they're banned, then it won't matter.
Oh, yeah, okay, that's right, so, okay. But
mean-
this is just for the changeable signs right here, this one right here.
The hours of illumination.
Okay,
One thing that concerns me, and the reason why, I hear you, Michelle, what you're saying about tweaking things, is even when I look at our bylaws now, and then I flip the page and I see signs that are not even in compliance with our bylaws now, for example, the time and weather on the electronic sign, I've seen it on other signs as well, it's just supposed to be related to your business. You brought up a point last month about, freedom of speech, we don't want to get into that.
Right,
So
there's
I
certain
think it needs to be
things we
black or
can't-
white. Either you can
Right.
have business only, or it's a free-for-all of whatever you want to say. And then even that Mo's sign, that still flashes, in my opinion. So, I mean, we're not even really following to me, there's already problems with the signs we have. So if we tweak it further, it doesn't seem to be followed anyway.
So can we maybe ask Mr. Federico what the difference is between electronic changeable copy, which right now is permitted, and flashing, moving, and animated signs, which sometimes on the electronic changeable copy, we see like little figures bouncing across the screen?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's where I was, talking with him about, like, looking at, there's volumes about sign regulations.
Yep.
In the United States.
I'm
Yeah,
sure.
not just Massachusetts. And in getting into the freedom of speech also. But, so there are manuals about electronic messaging on
Illuminated.
boards. And so that's some of the information that he was gonna start
this
to
would be
look into.
really tough.
Okay, great.
About what, what each one of those definition means, cause there's universal definitions that the sign world speaks. And that's what you should, reflect, just like when we're talking about housing or parking. I mean, there's universal language that, everyone in the fields use.
Right.
So that's what we wanna make sure, whatever kind of changes we make, we wanna make sure that that it's consistent with that.
Right.
So looking at this, and Teresa, you were, eliminate them, or?
Yeah,
consider that?
I'm like on the far extreme on this one.
So what I'll, so
But-
based on this, again, what I'll do in-house is start to put together, some bylaw changes. So you can look at them in the context of your existing bylaw, how they would fit in, and, am I hearing you? Am I, are we going in the right direction? So I'll have a draft of some language for you at the November meeting,
Okay,
definitely on this.
okay.
The hazardous waste, like I said, I've gotta get other people involved and talk to DEP and talk to other staff members. And then the non-conforming, I'll send Amy's, proposal with a, cover letter asking them to, weigh in on it, and, before the planning board.
Okay.
Um,
Before we move off of signs, Anthony, you mentioned backlit signs. Are you looking to eliminate those altogether, in?
altogether. I mean, certainly, I think in Route 9, I don't think it's necessarily bad in industrial, but basically, you know, business east.
So backlit signs would include
Yeah, so this is, I'll just read you.
internal lighting?
Yep, I'll read you what Southborough and Weston have, and it's basically identical. Illumination shall be by white, steady, stationary light, shielded and directed solely at the sign. No sign may utilize translucent panels, canvas, or other fabric, letters, devices, or other similar components to create an image by allowing light to pass through it, except for business frontage on Route 9. That's
Okay.
the kind of language I would be interested in.
Okay, so anything that has internal lighting.
Right.
Okay. So you're okay, highway business.
Yep.
How about like the FedEx facility out in industrial area?
Industrial's fine.
Industrial's okay?
Yeah.
Carrie, do you have an opinion on this yet?
I'm not sure what I do on the backlit signs.
Okay, that's fine. On this side?
So I would like everybody to think about all those small businesses in Main East Plaza, Northborough Shopping Plaza. You know, right now it gets dark at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. They still are open till like 5 or 6 o'clock at night. You're driving down Route 20, it's dark. There's no way to illuminate those signs. They're all backlit signs. And I think
How am I
along,
gonna find Tommy Lowe's?
how you gonna find that?
Right.
Find Ace Hardware, and then across the street. So they're up
Right.
and down Route 20. It's.
If you go down Route 20 though, even you look at Hayes Funeral Home, and there's others up and down that are stationary signs that are illuminated from the outside, and they're really aesthetically much better looking than the backlit signs.
I think you can do it with like a Hayes Funeral Home, and even like the design review gave the option with Metro West Oral Surgeons.
Yep.
And
I
they,
think the savings bank, Marlboro Savings
yeah,
Bank.
and they opted to go, they like the floodlights on it because they have the gardens around it, rather than the illumination. That was more of an aesthetic thing for them. And I think in those things, you can do it. I think when you get into the strip malls right now, you've got 12 businesses in there all crying for, look at me, I'm here, while you're driving by at 4 o'clock and it's dark out, right? They gotta get noticed. I just would not want to affect businesses. I just think the backlit signs would, and they're, you know, it's part of getting people into those shopping malls. So you've got that plaza, you've got the plaza with Piccadilly, the deli, Pickle House on there. You've got the plaza with Romaines in it that uses it. Then you've got all the way down Main Street. You've got, you know, you're gonna have where across from Dunkin' Donuts is, Dunkin' Donuts illuminated. You have across from there, that whole plaza is gonna eventually be done. You're gonna have probably lots of little shops in there. And when you have like a big giant anchor store in there, I mean, they're gonna be at the top of the sign. You're gonna have that little guy in there who's gonna be a coffee shop that wants to stand out. I just think it's really hard to do. I know what you're getting at. It's gonna look very New England and quaint, but I think moving forward, I think you've just got, right now, the diversity on Route 20, you probably have at least 70% backlit and 30% those little lights. I don't think it's fair for the new people coming in, but I think it's tough. I think it's tough on small businesses, and I think it would hurt them.
So you would not change the backlit?
No, you'd see me on town meeting floor.
Okay.
Just to reiterate
Yeah.
what,
I would do that.
to reiterate what Michelle was saying, I know a case-by-case basis with the design review committee,
Yeah.
and it starts to get to your point, Anthony, but case-by-case, the design review committee has asked people, if it's a solo business, to do those to do the, they're not illuminated, they're not backlit, whatever it is.
The
with
spotlights,
on 'em.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it looks good, it's
The wooden
tasteful.
sign or
Yeah.
the compost
Yeah.
sign, whatever, the composite sign with the lights on them. And I think most people have complied.
Yeah,
So it's been a suggestion from the design review committee, but again, it's on a case-by-case basis, and it's been on solo businesses where it's worked.
and you know, those
Solo
two towns,
businesses.
when you talk about Weston and Southborough, and I drive through them all the time, very different than
Very
Route
different.
20.
Yep.
They're very different, they're quaint, they're beautiful downtowns, but it's an apple and an orange, and I just would not want to hurt the small businesses.
Okay. Amy, what say you?
I was just listening to everybody's input, and I think it's great, and
You, it's,
I think for now I'm sticking with the electronic
Okay, you don't have an opinion either way right now on the internally lit?
No, I'm gonna drive down Route 20 tonight. Let's see what I say, but.
You should
Yeah, I
drive down, now it's after 8, so you may not get
They might
all
be
of
shut-
them.
turning their
Say
lights on.
tomorrow
Right.
at 6.
Right.
Tomorrow at 6 for a better idea. Okay, so we can continue discussing the backlit signs. Is that what they are, backlit signs?
Yeah.
Okay, so we can continue discussing the backlit signs. I think Carrie will probably take a drive around as well and peek, as will I. I don't know that I have an opinion one way or the other quite yet.
But drive around at 6 PM when people
Yeah.
are coming home from work and look at what would happen to those plazas if they were all dark.
What if we entertained or even looked at separating Business West or that section of Route 20 and more focusing on downtown?
It's a separate zoning district, so if that's where you're looking to eliminate it, then, you know, what's there now would stay.
Right.
And anything new would be subject to something different, and so that's certainly something that, you know, we can consider. I don't think anything's off the table yet. We've got at least 3 undecideds on what we wanna do, so it's definitely worth considering. Yep. Okay. All right, next, anything else, Amy, for the town meeting?
No.
No? Okay. Anything from this end for town meeting?
No.
No?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I do. Okay, first I wanted to take a look at, let's see. I want to take a look at the design review committee structure, and Michelle, I don't want to step on your toes, so.
Okay.
please,
Structure.
Well, in our bylaws, the way that we have it set up, we currently don't seem to have term limits or anything, and I was interested in, is this a spot in these bylaws where we would add a term limits, or, I'm not sure if it's the right place or not. I guess I just want to get to some sort of.
Are you looking to impose term limits on the design review committee members?
Correct.
Are you looking to impose term limits on any other committee at all, or just design review?
Oh, so it's my understanding that most of them have it, is that not true?
I don't know that any of them do they?
The, I don't know, I'd have to look. I mean, design review is the only board that you have, I mean, you have designees amongst yourself to another board. There's no time limits on those. Groundwater advisor committee, I don't think Earthworks, I don't know about Earthworks.
No, I've been there for 10 years, so.
So our own appointee has the limit. So for example, we approved someone in May, Fred, was it, to Earthworks?
Yep.
Yeah, so exactly, so some of the appointees do, some of the appointees don't.
Okay.
Like I said, on the groundwater advisory committee, design review committee, the at-large members on Earthwork, these are just the boards that I'm more familiar with. I don't know about any of I have no idea about Board of Health. The 3 elected boards in town obviously have limits, you know, you, school, and Board of Select. So I don't know, I can find that out, Gary, I don't know, I mean, there's a lot of boards in this town.
So, but I think, here's the important point about that is, like an Earthworks board has very little they can do other than follow the rules. So if the applicant is following the rules, we can enforce it, and if they aren't, we can enforce it. There are some boards, you know, like the ZBA, for example, that makes decisions on structure of town and decisions on zoning and, you know, with the permits that get applied or accepted or not. And I think those are some of the areas, and maybe even the design review, where they make decisions like that should be refreshed, where they're not just enforcing current code.
So do you want to see term limits for ZBA members?
Well, they already have it, right?
Do they have it? I don't know.
ZBA? Yeah, that's a 3-year.
Well, they're
But they can be reappointed.
reappointed every 3 years.
Oh.
Yeah, so there's, technically I could be reappointed 10 times and serve 30 years
Right.
straight. And
Well,
some
that's a
might
good
argue that as assuming like with design review, with DRC, you're put in there because you are an architect or a landscape architect, or you have one of these qualifications to be in there. Presumably, so long as you're on DRC, you are within that profession. And so as you advance in your profession, your knowledge gets greater, you're actually bringing more to the board
Right.
over time. So is there a specific concern about design review that you have?
I do, yes. My concern with design review is that, well, specifically for the citizen representative, it's not currently held by what I would consider to be a citizen representative. It's held by a developer who stands to make money from decisions made by this board. So I feel like that's a bit of a conflict in that role. And if we had the ability to have some sort of term limit, then we'd have the ability to review the candidates on that board, if it still fits within this criteria, if it makes sense, and maybe make a call for people, you know, put a call out there, are there any interested residents in being a part of that board that would want to sit on it? Or, you know, if people get tired of being on it or want to move on, do something else, that's fine too. But that's my specific concern with that board.
So, Tony Abu.
That's right.
Okay. I just want to make sure that I understand what you're saying. You think that Tony Abu serving on the design review committee gives him some advantage if he appears in front of this board?
I'm not speaking, I don't want to speak specifically and be in an accusatory manner. I just want to put it in a general sense that if somebody stands to make money from decisions of this board, then if they're going to be on the design review committee that makes recommendations to this board, I need to be able to take those recommendations seriously and know that they were made by a non-biased board. I feel that if you stand to make money from decisions of this board, I can't fairly think you're not a biased representative. Additionally, if it's supposed to be a resident in that spot, I think that just adds insult to injury in that makeup of the board, is my concern.
Is he not a resident?
He's a resident.
Of course he's a resident,
on
but
the
I mean,
list.
if we put, my point going back to term limits is if we had some sort of limit, maybe there's a call we make to residents. Maybe there's 20 people interested in it, and we just don't know because we're never asking. We're just constantly putting the same people on over and over again.
Okay. I just want to, I really just wanted to understand your conflict of interest thing, that's all. Because my take on it is that, like George Pember, for example, who served on this board for many, many years, would have clients who would appear in front of the ZBA.
Right, right.
And as an attorney, he stands to make money off from the representation of his clients. But that doesn't necessarily pose a conflict of interest because he was a planning board member and now he's in front of ZBA doing development, you know, submitting an application, representing people. So I want to make sure that we're all on the same page with respect to what exactly that conflict of interest is, because I think that the five of us are extremely capable of making decisions irrespective of who's standing in front of us and what they've done and what they've recommended or not recommended. And I know that we are all extremely strong-headed about our feelings about certain things, so.
Yes.
There's also, just to give you all just some additional information that you probably may or may not be aware of, but there's a specific statute that the town has adopted about special municipal employees, and that allows and most towns have adopted this. So that allows, because small towns rely on, or all towns outside of a city makeup, rely on volunteers, that there often are conflicts. You know, as, I mean, you mentioned, you know, George Pember as an example, but so the special municipal employee status that through the Board of Selectmen recognizes that board members may appear before another board, and that it does not constitute a conflict of interest.
Okay, thanks for explaining that. That's fair. But
So-
on the committee itself, when the landscape works for you and the architect works for you, or at some point is paid by you, and you're all voting together, that seems a little different than what you're saying
Yeah.
with.
Well, and any board member, I mean, whether it's design review or not, Carrie, but I mean, any board member, and I know Tony has, I mean, I'm not here to defend or not any, you know, or accuse any board member, but, I know just in the past, Tony has recused himself. I think Tom Reardon has recused himself. When we had an interior designer on the board before, she had to recuse herself, you know, a few times because it ended up being, you know, she has a business in town, and of course, local people hire her, you know. So, so they've recused themselves, you know, just as, You know, I mean, it's happened on other boards, but.
Right.
But that said, I just wanted to let you know that there is that special employee status.
Okay.
But, I mean, I can look into what other boards, just because it's not anything that I'm involved in, you know, other boards that have, you know, time limits. You know, like boards that appoint other boards, you know, such as you know, the only board that you appoint is Design Review Committee. And then, you know, does it make sense to put in like a 5-year term or something? I don't know, whatever you're thinking about, or maybe thinking.
Okay. And I'm not adverse to term limits, I just want to understand it. So do you think that putting in term limits eliminates a conflict of interest situation?
No, but at least it would give us the chance to evaluate it. The reason I brought it up is because I think we talked about it a couple months ago, and there seemed to be nothing in place that we could really fall back on to have tools to reevaluate or revisit. It's just kind of, unless somebody quits, we're stuck with what we've got. So the heart of what I'm asking for is really just to put in a tool for us as a board to not just wait for someone to quit.
Well, I don't think that that's entirely the case, because if one of the DRC members acted in a way that was inappropriate or outside the scope of what they're supposed to be doing, or if they clearly had a conflict of interest and then just ignored that and participated when they shouldn't have participated, my assumption would be that that would be reported over to us by the chair of that board, and we would do something about that.
Right. I'm not accusing, again, I'm not in an accusatory way accusing anybody of doing something nefarious. I'm just wondering if the optics of it. So when residents come and sit here and they see that that's what the board consists of, or when I get a recommendation and I know what the board consists of, just transparency, I don't mean to say transparency, just the optics, I guess. It's just not the best.
So do you have the same concern with any of the other appointees, or just our citizen appointees?
Well, specifically the citizen one, because I think that that's a great opportunity to get residents involved on a committee like that. And it may be something that, if we did want to get somebody in there, that, you know, most of us are not architects or landscape architects, and we'd never have the opportunity to be there, but that's one spot that we could open to residents, I think.
Michelle, you want to weigh in on this?
I mean, if the board did consider it, I would say it should be for all of them. Because there are probably 20 or 30 architects in town, 20, you know, not 20 or 30 landscapers, but there's certainly plenty of landscapers we could ask. I feel, you know, we're almost begging for people to come on, because over the years, we can't find people. We're like, you know, and then Corridor 9. So if I were to say it, I wouldn't want to single out just one. I would say, let's just do it for all. And I do agree, you know, we have a new architect on the board, and she brings a lot of great insight that I never thought before. You know, maybe it's time for me to retire, I don't know, you know. You can't be on every board and committee.
Just on this one. Only on this one now. This is all I do.
So, but, you know, so I think in general, I always think, you know, new blood is good. But I also think you need to have some history with it too, so. I'm not opposed to it, and, you know, I just wouldn't want it just to be for one specific, like a resident or you know, an engineer. I think it would like to be all the way down, including the planning board member. We should just rotate.
And
If the
do you
board
have
decides.
Do you have an idea, if that were to happen, would you have a number of years in place that you think would be enough?
Well, isn't most terms, Kathy, 3 years?
Again, I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, I certainly know
think-
the elected are.
I think most of them are 3, you know. I mean, how the design review committee works is, when an applicant comes before us, the very first meeting is a very casual meeting where they're presenting the idea, and sort of we just mull it over and figure out, are we both, you know, are all the committee members agreement that we're heading in the right direction? And then we give them our input, and we ask at the very first meeting, no pen to paper. We don't want the applicant to be spending a lot of money on engineering drawings and stuff like that, because we're looking for conceptual. And then from that, we move on to the second meeting where it's more pen to paper, and they come back with more schematics, and then we fine tune things about materials and the layout and design. And then, I mean, we're very limited in scope on what we can do. I mean, it's not zoning, it's more like, you know, your lighting, your signage, the placement of the building and stuff like that. And then, you know, everyone goes through 3, and then there's the third one, which is you just sort of compile it all together, in this case, like the dentist, we're missing maybe just a couple of landscape stuff, but then it's all compiled together, and then it's presented to either the ZBA or the planning board.
Right.
What I don't want to do is to feel like a planning board or a ZBA needs to accept or, like that the zoning part about it is, because we're approving it, means that the planning board needs to approve it. Do you know what I'm saying? I feel like it should be, like you said, the board who's in front of should be able to say, yes, I think this should move forward, not because design review said it should move forward. Design review, 90% of our work is in the devil's in the detail with the building itself, the shutters, no shutters, windows, doorways, stuff like that. Is not in that concept part of the zoning, should this applicant be approved. I feel like the board should make that decision and not have, just because the design review committee approved it, means that the planning board or ZBA needs to approve it. That's my whole thought on
Yeah,
that.
there really is no, I mean, even going way back,
Yeah.
there really is no discussion and I know we're a little off topic, Carrie, from what you brought up, but there really is no review of, or even discussion about the zoning, like whether this is allowed or not, or whether you'll get a variance or not. Like, that doesn't even come into play. It's not even on the table, because it has nothing to do with the jurisdiction.
Right.
Okay,
So, to, back to your question, I think 3 is plenty. If you go with 5, that's fine, but,
So if we do 3-year term limits and we can't find anyone to fill the landscape architect, we could rely on subparagraph E, the balance of representation, as close as possible to this, but out of the 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 that are there, which one is the most important? Is there one? There might not be.
I think everyone brings their own value.
Okay.
Yeah, really.
Okay.
I mean, you have to have an architect, right? Kathy and I learn every day from those architects. Now we're blessed with 2, right? Same with, you have to have a landscape architect, but, we've got a lot of landscapers in town that I think could help out, so we've never had a shortage of that.
So landscapers and landscape architects are 2 different.
Yeah, well, most of the landscapers do have a landscape architect somewhere in staff, at least the bigger ones do.
Okay.
I think we've got 3 or 4 in
So
town
you,
that do.
you think we'd be able to fill these
Yes.
spaces relatively
Yeah.
easily at this
I
point?
think where maybe Kerry was like, how do you choose the resident and how do you choose when there isn't someone from Corridor 9 who's available?
Okay.
So then you have 2 resident positions open, right? So,
Amy? anything
I
to
thought
say
it
on
was
this?
both interesting points, good points by Carrie, good points by Michelle, so I'm just taking it all in. And I think term limits are good too, but I think they have to be probably 5 to 6, because I feel like just being on the planning board too, by my first term, I'm really just learning what to do, so.
Or what about just
But-
evaluation for
Yeah, an
reappointment?
evaluation.
So it doesn't, maybe you don't stop at 5, but you just, like, every so often, there's a reappointment type process where you just
Right.
evaluate your people, and maybe someone, you say, hey, you getting sick of this, or, do we want to go in ask a different resident, or, I don't know, something like that.
You put it out there, but then if nobody applies, you can keep going.
Yeah, let me go
Can,
around it.
will you look and see, I just want to make sure that if we decide for this one particular committee that we're going to impose term limits, that we're not running afoul of anything else.
Yeah, I will, I'll check
I'm-
with,
I
like,
really-
Anthony and I were saying, I don't think that there are on the,
Okay.
but that's just one board that he and I both, he's more familiar with it than I
Right.
am, but just off the top of my head with the third board. But, yeah, I'll check the other boards in town.
Okay.
Just for
and
starters.
maybe sometimes this gets solved by people get busy, and we talked about, like, the letter that was sent out where people get busy and missed meetings, and that sort of filters through where people have to step down because they're so busy in their career.
Yeah, that might resolve your problem.
After the last design review, only 2 people made it, and Carrie and I were there.
Anything else?
Yes.
Can I just ask how many we have?
Just one more topic.
Okay, go ahead.
The other topic that I wanted to bring up, and going back to design review, and if I'm stepping on your toes, just tell me
They're okay now.
Did I step on them? I'm sorry. Oh, okay.
Joking. It's almost 9 o'clock,
It's
I'm
all
just
good,
joking.
good.
No.
Okay. Okay, so, as Amy mentioned, I was at the last Design Review Committee meeting, and it was really interesting because we went through all of the, design guidelines at that time, and, Judy was at that meeting. Judy Barrett, who obviously worked on the bylaw, helped formulate the bylaw from last year. And it was interesting to me because she seemed to be really surprised by the waiver that we had in place in our bylaw. She strongly recommended against it and said that it created disconnect, that the planning board had valid reasons to change the frontage, and the waiver just really didn't make sense.
This is the duplex waiver?
Yes,
Carrie?
correct, yes. So, and I know for other people who are there, feel free to jump in, I don't wanna overstep. But in any case, she seemed surprised and thought it was just really had a negative reaction to that waiver. So I wanted to maybe talk about that, and see, one point she made was, and I know we have an active hearing coming up that involves it, so I don't wanna necessarily, I don't think it makes sense necessarily to take a vote on it or anything like that, but, one thing she did say was if the planning board wasn't going to grant waivers, then just put that out there, because we were just gonna be wasting people's time and money as they run around trying to get themselves situated to get a waiver, and they were going to go through all this, jump through all the hoops, pay all the money, go through all the whole process, and then when the planning board is not even really gonna approve waivers. On one hand, I guess we have to see what goes with how we feel when we go through this next hearing. But I wanted to put that out there and see if anyone else caught that. Anthony, I don't think you were there, I don't think. But if anyone else caught that conversation when Judy mentioned it,
Yeah, you're right on, Carrie.
and kind of what we thought about that.
So you're not asking for anything relative to the Design Review Committee's guidelines. What you're actually looking for is potential elimination of the waiver that was added into the duplex bylaw.
Yeah, that's right, yes,
Okay.
correct,
Just wanna make
sorry.
sure we're
I
focusing
went
on the
around
thing.
about.
I'm gonna cross that off my list. So, from my perspective, it's hard to know whether or not I would grant a waiver until the application's sitting in front of me.
Right, right.
So it's hard, it's hard to say. Every situation, every piece of property is unique. So it's hard to say whether I would do it, but I'm one of 5, so.
Yeah, Kathy was there, I was there, Carrie was there, and Amy was there. And then the only other person there was Tom Reardon. The other members of the design review weren't able to be there. And it was Judy, when she heard about it, she was surprised, right? She said, I'm surprised you guys put that in there. I wouldn't have advised you to put that in there. I think you should. And then she went on and discussed further about why she thought it shouldn't be in there, and, sort of left it at that as our, consultant who said, I would have not advised you to put that in there. I don't know why you did it, and we ended the conversation after 5 minutes.
I agree, I was with Michelle, but, I think we should talk more about it after the next hearing, the 222. But maybe not decide on anything tonight.
We're not deciding on anything
Right.
tonight anyway.
Okay,
so
so I guess,
you're
I was
okay.
there, I heard it, and
Okay.
you definitely said it.
All
and I
right.
think we should discuss it.
So it's on the list of things to think about. It's on the list, okay. Hold on, Anthony, do you want to weigh in? on it, or you
I
can-
think it's definitely something we need to revisit, but I think we should wait until we get some of these open hearings passed us.
Okay. Anything else?
So related to that, related to this bylaw, the duplex bylaw, so on the marijuana bylaw, we had put a footnote about a no-use variance. And I'm wondering if it would make if it would make sense to do the same for the two-family dwelling, to not put the use variance in there. It seems confusing to have some go through the planning board, some go through the ZBA. It would just make sense to me if the special permit granting authority was all under the same roof. I don't know how anybody feels about that, or how that works based on history, or if there's any reason why we didn't do it last time.
Well, let me ask Kathy, do they go to ZBA because they need the use variance, or they go to ZBA for something else?
For duplexes?
Duplexes.
Specifically?
Yeah.
An applicant would go to the ZBA if they were looking to put in a duplex in these zones that either don't, that specifically don't allow it, RA and RB, or if they were looking to put one in a business district or an industrial district.
So it would be use variance.
That would be a use variance, yes. Otherwise, it's a special permit from this board, from the planning board, for, you know, RC, GR, Main Street residential, and downtown neighborhood. So Carrie, do you mean the East Main Street one?
So actually,
Or you had a question?
I was just looking at resident A and B, so if it's currently a no, but you could get a use variance, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's just how variances work in general. If it's either a no in your bylaw, or if it's not addressed in your bylaw, the process would be for someone to apply for a use variance.
A couple of years ago, we tried to actually eliminate use variances in town. We still have them.
Across the board.
Yeah. We tried to eliminate them altogether, and that just didn't,
Right, unless it's specifically written into a specific portion of the bylaw, like it was proposed for the marijuana.
Okay, so is there a reason we didn't do it? So we did it for marijuana. Marijuana's all no's, but we didn't do it for the duplexes. There was no use variance added. Would it make sense to have no use variances there so that the planning board, the duplexes would come before the planning board, period? Or is that not something that we would?
well, let me make sure I understand the concern. Is the concern that duplexes are being, the oversight of duplexes is falling under two different boards?
A little bit, yeah. It's just, is
Or-
there a consistency that we need to put in place here?
Well, they have to live by the same guidelines that we do in terms of allowing that to go forward after they've overcome the use variance issue. So there is consistency in that regard. It would just be, it's more of, you just don't wanna see it in those specific districts, because that's effectively what will happen. Is you're basically saying if it's not allowed in those districts, then it's just never gonna be allowed in those districts, period. There's
Well,
no
if
way
they
to
get a special
bring it,
permit.
there's no way to bring it back here unless they get the use variance. So if you eliminate the use variance, we're not gonna have oversight, they're just never gonna be allowed there.
In resident A and B?
Yeah. I think, well, whatever it is that,
In the table of uses that we did in the zoning bylaw, and this just followed what we had done in the past, is, because there's a table of uses for residential districts, and then there's a table of uses for commercial and industrial districts. So for, marijuana, we did it in both districts, both tables. So sort of the hue and cry was that we don't want marijuana establishments anywhere in Northborough ever. So that's why they were all no's, and then that's why no use variance was allowed. So that, if that bylaw was approved, which it was, then, that guarantees that there are none coming to Northborough. And people were, very emphatic about that. So, but with the, two families, we just put it in because it's a residential use, we just adjusted the use table for residential districts. So it's not even addressed, well, actually, I'll take that back. I think it is addressed in table 2, but we did not change it. I think, I think in table 2, yeah, it's not addressed in table 2. There's just single family, multifamily, congregate, and assisted living.
Okay, so if the intent is to just make the planning board the special permit authority across the board, does that not accomplish it? Is that what you're saying?
well, what that'll do is that anybody who lives in, I'm just gonna peek over your shoulder.
Oh, sorry.
Anybody who lives in, this is it right here, RA, residential A, residential B, they can never approach a board and say, I'd like to do a duplex here. I've got 400 feet of frontage and it goes back 600 feet. I wanna do one duplex right, way back there in the middle. They can never come before a board and ask for a special permit because it is prohibited and there are no use variances allowed.
Okay, so that doesn't guarantee a special permit. that doesn't allow for asking for a special permit.
No, because as it stands, if you want residential A and residential B to be allowed to have duplexes and come before the board, you'd have to allow it as a permitted use with a special permit, which after a really, really, really long discussion where
Right.
we had GIS go and give us the frontage lengths for all the different houses and the different lots and everything. As a board, we ultimately decided that in those two districts, given the types of neighborhoods and the characteristics of those neighborhoods, that there are really only a couple of unique properties that might be appropriate for duplexes, and therefore having a use variance for them rather than a special permit for almost anyone would make more sense.
Okay,
It was more of a, there was a really thorough examination of the various neighborhoods in those districts.
okay, so that still makes sense to everybody then, to not do any, to leave those as is.
I can only speak for me. Go down the line this way.
I guess if you explain it that way, yeah, then I guess we should leave it the way it is.
Yeah, because I think the only way to bring residential A and residential B in front of us, and Kathy, correct me if I'm wrong, the only way to bring them in front of us is if
Would be a
we,
special permit.
a special permit, which we would first have to eliminate the N under the RA and the RB and change that to a yes, but only with a special permit, which
Yeah,
means
and-
that,
And then you'd wanna look at, the zoning, you know, the chart, that we also put together for how big the lots have to be.
Right.
You wanna do that, because I mean, those lots are, RA and
Right.
RB is, you know, RA is a 2 acre lot, and RB is a 1 acre lot. So you wanna look at, I would think you'd wanna look at, whether you wanted to change the minimum lot area and the minimum lot frontage.
right, I mean, there was a lot of discussion about this.
No, I
In
remember.
those, especially the residential areas that we ultimately decided that should be, not allowed as a use, and it was really because of the nature and characteristics of those residential areas overall.
Okay.
So it was really more of a, in keeping in conformity with what's there, putting duplexes might not make any sense at all.
Okay,
But again, if they have to go in front of ZBA, once they overcome that use variance hurdle, they still have to conform to all the other parts of the zoning bylaw that apply to duplexes. It's not just a, yeah, here's your use variance, knock yourself out, kid. It's, they still have to deal with all the other duplex bylaws as well.
okay, that makes sense. Then I guess I would just want to revisit the waiver piece after the hearing.
Okay,
I think that was it.
that's it. Anthony,
I'm good.
thank you. Michelle?
Nope.
You're good. All right, there being no other business before the board.
No, no.
Oh,
In the agenda, didn't we have ZBA applications?
oh, did I?
Wait, I
Do
do
we
have,
have any?
I do have one question. So, do you think, just looking at the schedule for when we have to get warrant articles submitted, and considering we have a hearing on the 14th, and we're discussing something else, that we just put on the agenda,
Well, just more master.
master plan.
Stuff, yeah.
Do we have, should we try to get a second meeting in to address all of these things, or we only have one in November and then one in December? Does that give enough time for us to get everything we need to do for warrant articles on February 4th?
Well, here's what I would say about that. It could be that we have enough time, because none of what we are contemplating is a dramatic rewrite of anything in particular. Like, we've got very spotlight
Okay.
issues, so we may have enough time, but why don't we look and see where we stand on the 14th, and if we need to add, start doubling down on meetings, we can do that.
Okay,
All
fair
right.
enough.
Because we'll have more information by the next meeting, and if we all do our homework in advance, it'll go.
I think that was a good idea too, that Carrie had, but in 2 weeks, you won't hear back from the town staff, you don't think, on some of the other ones, like the
No,
hazardous waste?
we're in the process right now of budgets and town reports and with deadlines between now and beginning of November, so like middle November, so I know that myself included, everyone's involved in that, so I wouldn't have anything to do. I know that.
This is on the hazardous waste one.
I don't
Right,
actually
and the
say that,
hazardous
yeah.
waste is really important to me, and I just feel like, I know you're gonna go to Board of Health and DEP, but I think as the zoning board, if other towns are citing it with conditions, I would think we would be able to cite it with conditions also.
So
I'm not
maybe
saying
we,
you can't, Amy, I
Yeah.
just don't know enough about it to give you guys any guidance whatsoever.
Okay.
And
Maybe
I'm
we'll
gonna go
just-
to the people that
And
know this.
I'm not really inclined to just photocopy somebody else's
Yeah.
bylaw, because
Yeah.
we are not like any other town out there. We're just not.
No. No,
we're not
we
that
wanna
terminally
protect
ourselves,
We're
but
just not.
anyways, maybe we can consider a second one in December if.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying, like,
Yeah.
let's see where we are in November, because we could have some of these issues fall off the table, we could have them get bigger, and, you know, but we should make that decision. I'm open to it, but before we go ahead and schedule it, let's make sure we need it. Anything else?
ZBA application.
Oh, ZBA applications, are
Yeah.
there any?
I was just gonna touch base with you on, there's 3 that's on the October 23rd agenda, that's next week. 2 of them are sign variances. One I think is the Shopped Way sign variance is, for a bigger sign, that, I think that's Old Navy. Old Navy's going where EMS used to be. This has nothing to do with the ZBA, but if every, just while we're talking about that shopping plaza, Applebee's is closed, people are aware of that?
Oh.
Applebee's closed on Sunday.
Huh, I've never actually been there.
So not all Applebee's, just the Northborough Applebee's.
Okay.
For some reason, Westboro and Northborough can't keep an Applebee's. I don't know. Cause there used to be one on Route 9 where not your average Joe is.
Was that an Applebee's? I didn't know that. Okay.
So the Shops Way one is for Old Navy. Like I said, I don't know what size sign they're looking for. The 386, I think it's for a sign that comes off the building, not on the building, but comes off the building. It's, there's a name for that particular sign, but. And then 386 West Main Street, that is next to Harney Park, Pendleton Square, I think it's called. So they are looking to erect a freestanding sign. I honestly don't know if they have one right now or not.
They do, it's
They do.
really small, it says Pendleton Square.
Okay.
It's like hidden in bushes almost,
So I think.
if I remember correctly, right? It's pretty small.
I think the.
Yeah.
Appropriate?
Yeah.
I think the one they wanna put up is, the freestanding sign right now in the business districts talks about if you have 10 or less. And I think they have 11, and they wanna put 11 people on their sign, and that requires a variance. So they're before the ZBA for that. And then 205 Brewer Street is a gentleman who lives there, and wants to, I don't know if he has a dog walking business now, or if he's going to create a dog walking business, but he's before the ZBA to ask to, allow him to have a dog walking business out of his home, and also, the ability to board dogs. You know, apparently the way the way he described it in his application is not to be boarding dogs like 7 days a week, but if occasionally one of his clients goes out of town or something and they want
Babysitter?
Have a sleepover.
to, I guess, yeah. So anyway, so he's before, so that's the other ZBA hearing.
Cool.
I just wanted to make some comments. And one thing I actually wanted to bring up, I don't know which to start with, but on page 717 of our zoning bylaws, number 6, it talks about the development review team shall conduct a technical review of the site plan and submit written comments and recommendations to the special permit granting authority, like how we get recommendations from Lake Fred and the police and the fire. In the event that the zoning board of appeals is a special permit granting authority, the planning board shall also conduct a technical review of the site plan and submit written comments and recommendations to the zoning board of appeals. So, the dog one, and I'm not meaning to pick on the dog one at all, but he is a site plan he's a special permit with site plan approval. So I had a couple comments and didn't know if that was something we could write up because it says in the bylaws that we shall. give comments. But my only two comments on it is, can they put a condition in that it stays at 3 dogs? Because it is in a residential neighborhood, and with our non-conforming to non-conforming, I don't know, it can grow. So I think a condition of the application that I would like to mention to the ZBA, and they'll probably think of it on their own, but as a.
Amy, I think of, just so that you,
Sure.
you know, so maybe you'll feel better about this.
Okay.
In the zoning bylaw, there is a definition for what a kennel
Yes.
comprises.
The kennel is over 3, I did look it up too.
Yeah, and he's saying that he doesn't wanna do over 3, because a kennel is not allowed in that zoning district.
Right. I just thought, even though he says he doesn't want to do over 3, it's better to have it in writing as a condition. Because it can turn into a kennel and nobody will know, really, because he's out on Brewer Street.
Well, his neighbors will know.
Another condition I thought of,
Well,
though.
hold on,
Oh,
before you
sure.
go there. His neighbors will know, and the neighbors, as with any other potential zoning issue, can contact the zoning enforcement officer, whose job it is to enforce the zoning, and the ZEO can then go out there and shut that down.
Right.
You know, institute fines if necessary, but, you know, take whatever action is necessary to make sure they're complying with their special permit and the zoning in general. So, it's not that there's no enforcement available. That's the job of the ZEO.
Right, but I just thought
So-
having it as a condition that makes it easier for the zoning enforcement agency to go down there and say, the condition says only 3 dogs. You have 4. One other condition I wanted to ask for, though, is that the permit runs with the owner. Because part of special permits is you can have them run for the term of ownership by the applicant. That's just protecting the neighbors, also back to non-conforming. This special permit will go with the land. So once he moves, the next person can move in, and he can run a dog business too. And he might not be as respectable as this person, or have the same qualifications. And he's writing,
I think on that one, because we explored this.
We did
Yep.
look at
And we got an
this.
opinion from town council.
We did.
And there, you have to have that in your zoning bylaw in order to change how it runs.
You can't make it specific to one industry. It has to be
Yeah, I-
industry-wide,
Right, but if
zoning-wide.
you state that in your zoning bylaw, that it can only run with the, you know, like present applicant or something like that, you have to have that in your zoning bylaw.
You sure?
Because- Yeah, because you guys went around and around on this with,
Yeah, we did.
McPhee Towing.
Yeah.
right, but I thought that was, we were having the discussion before McPhee, we said the variance ran with the land, and we were told the special permit went with the owner. And that the decision we got back was, no, it runs with the land for both the special permit and the variance. I didn't think we talked
Right,
about
and then it-
conditions, but I have it right here in the packet.
And then if you wanted to change that, I believe that, town council said we had to put something in our zoning bylaw.
Are you sure? I don't remember that. And I didn't read it in the packet I have from Central Mass Planning. It just says you can put a condition.
So if we did get an opinion of council, let's just take it up.
And if we do
So
have
we
that
can find
opinion,
it,
then I
so.
might want to add that to town meeting for next year, too.
Oh, we're gonna need 2, we're gonna spill into a second night.
Well, I mean, 'cause it really limits the board, it really limits the, and I'm not saying anything against the zoning board, but it limits their ability to condition it on time. Because now, anybody that comes through for a variance, it's gonna run forever with the land or the special permits. And even when we were told, Fran was there too, and she was shocked, because she's like, I always thought the special permit went with the owner and not with the land. We all did, so I think we should be allowed, right. Well, I think that's why we should be allowed to
But
put the
But
condition in.
is the issue that you can't single out one particular industry and say, well, in your case, this is only gonna
Right,
run with the owner,
exactly.
all other times,
Right,
you
it's
have to
only-
either do all or nothing.
Right. Yeah.
And so, you know, for a lot of other businesses in this town, that makes no sense at all, to limit them like that, because then you're basically restricting anyone from selling a business.
Right, and that's
That
the whole
has a
discussion
special
you all
permit.
had about
Right.
that, was that, you were talking about, restaurants. I remember restaurants being one of the big discussions, because restaurants often change hands. And if you put that into the zoning bylaw, that any time a restaurant changed hands, they would have to come back to either the planning board or the zoning board of appeals and go through the whole, process again. So,
So what about, for example, the dental office, where he had a variance for that sign, I believe, and now he's moving it, but the next tenant that goes into that property, do they get to benefit of that variance as well then, since he got a new variance for the new property?
I think got a variance on height, I think, on that sign. I'll check with Bob, but, the building inspector. But, I think the way that, the town council came, what their opinion was that it runs with the land.
Okay.
So when you're granting, the variances or the special permit, that they run with the land, unless you specifically state otherwise in your zone.
So that dentist that moved out of here, just using it as an example, in his old property, he has a changeable electronic billboard sign. And he's moving it over to the new property with it. But the new person it's over by the Remains property, still gets to have a changeable sign.
I think so,
But they get,
Yeah.
but no, he would get it because it's permitted right
Right,
now.
it's not
Yeah,
And
it's
if they applied
permitted.
right now, it'd get it because it's permitted, not because there's a variance. The only
Right.
variance there would be the height, so they could do the
that's true,
additional
that's
height,
what his variance was on, was the
but
height.
not,
Oh, okay, not with the sign.
not with the sign.
That
Oh, got it,
particular lot.
okay.
No, so anybody who goes there or anywhere
Up
else
until
would be
town
allowed.
meeting, if you,
Until town meeting
Yeah,
is
they-
gonna be
yeah.
allowed to do it, assuming that
Yeah,
we
that's
get
right.
it passed.
okay, I understand now. Okay.
Yeah.
So can we check on that? Because the way I read it right here, and this is Central Mass Planning, a special permit, unlike a variance, may be conditioned by limiting its duration to term of ownership. But it doesn't say it's a condition on this special permit, because this whole packet is on special permits. It doesn't state that if you condition him, that means everybody else is conditioned. It just mentions that you can add it as a condition to this specific special permit.
So for, at least for this applicant right here who's looking for a dog business, what you're suggesting is that the board maybe send a letter to the ZBA suggesting that they not allow more than 3 dogs. The other thing we can't really comment on because we don't know what legal counsel has recommended we do or not do.
Right.
We might be able to find out by tomorrow. Because there's gotta be an email. And if we did find out that we could condition it per application, I would like to send that as part of a letter. The condition of
I don't know that I
ownership.
could agree to that second one. As a business owner in town, I don't know that I could agree to single out a specific business and say, you're not allowed to sell your business to somebody.
Well, he's in a residential
You don't
neighborhood.
have, I mean, what's to say that somebody doesn't buy my business from me and go in there and run a crazy law firm? You know,
Right,
it's
but
like,
you're in
it's-
the business district.
No, I understand that, but my use in that business district could be far more offensive than a dog walking business in Brewer Street. I could blow the place up. It's just-
And I'm not picking
it's-
on him, I'm just saying that
it's-
I know things
No,
grow
I
as they go down the
understand.
line.
I have a hard time picking on one industry and not all industries.
Oh, yeah, I'm not
You know,
even
and
picking on
it's-
his industry.
So you're picking on him in particular?
No, the person that comes next,
what
because
you're
I think when he sells his house,
You don't know who that's
he's
gonna
not
be.
gonna sell
What
his
if it's
house as a
you?
dog walking
But
industry.
what if it's you? You don't know who it's gonna be.
Well, then she can go
Oh, I know, if I was a dog
Get another
walker,
permit,
Right,
but-
yeah.
and I sell my house, I think my house is just gonna be sold as a house, not as a dog walking company. Like, he's not gonna have signs and,
But his
it's a home use.
okay, but his neighbors know because they're butters within 300 feet. So they receive notice.
So I'm in favor of, I don't know how the other board members, about sending, if we feel like we should send a letter on about no more than 3 dogs. I think that's reasonable. Do you feel like that's reasonable? I mean, I don't know what dog walking business, if they have 6 dogs.
I don't know if it's reasonable or unreasonable, I feel like it's a little superfluous, because if he does anything more than 3, he's a kennel, and
That's
then
right.
we have
Yeah.
other zoning that sort of puts,
Yeah.
comes into play there. You know, I think part of this is, do we have to tell people, when somebody comes in with an application and says, I only want this, do we have to say, okay, so we're allowing you to only have that, and by the way, you can only have that?
They
Like,
did,
it's-
Indian
that's-
Meadow Golf Course did
that's-
that in the
that's-
1950s, right in the deed, it says, you can be a golf course, but as soon as you are not a golf course anymore, you have to revert back to residential.
Yeah, that's a deed restriction,
Yeah,
that,
that's
and
deed
that makes sense. That's entirely different, yeah.
Those are their deeds.
I understand, we're not, this one isn't open to a public hearing. That's a great question for the ZBA. That's a great question for the ZBA, because they will have their own hearing on it. Okay, that's. I have no idea, no, but. Oh, he could have 12 dogs of his own, yeah. Don't know, I don't know, that's not, it's a question that the ZBA should check out. That's, it's like within their purview. Thank you. Do you have, so on this side, 3, is there concern on this side that we need to send a letter about the 3 dogs and only 3 dogs?
Well, Amy, what was the point you made about when somebody goes to look it up? Was there an issue with, we would want it in that condition, or that part of?
I didn't know, I just wanted to add it as a condition, because the way he stated in his application, not to exceed 3 dogs at a time, so I thought it would be a good condition to have, is not to exceed 3 dogs at a time. He's agreeing to it anyways. So,
Well, so I think what we could do is look at or have a limitation for the total number of dogs that he has on premise, whether it's his own or boarding dogs.
I don't know, because the care and keeping of your own dogs is handled separately from any business that you operate, right?
I would think
So-
so, but I honestly, you know, the Board of Health has regulations about, you know, how many dogs, pets, you know, what's considered a pet, what's not considered a pet. So
Right.
I don't know what the
Yeah.
ZBA, if there's a limit as to how many dogs you can have as a pet at your house.
Right.
So I would just-
There is on dogs and cats, but I don't know what it is.
I just think if there was this unlimited number, it would be very difficult to enforce.
Well, okay, that I understand.
He doesn't say in his application, how many clients, is that on page six? It's a special permit because it's considered a home personal service. He's not gonna exceed 3 dogs. He doesn't, at least not in the material I have, that he has any, that he's provided any information about how many dogs he would have on the property. I'm sure that's something that the ZBA will ask.
Well, so it's not clear to me that he actually started the application in that way. It looks like it was an added note, maybe even by Bob, not to exceed 3 dogs at a time. So I don't know if he was told, if his intent was always to only have 3 dogs, or he was told that. It's different handwriting, different color. So it makes me wonder if maybe it isn't a bad idea to, put that in a condition to just be sure that.
Well, one of the considerations is that when he comes before the ZBA, the purpose of his application is because he wants to start an in-home business. So for purposes of counting dogs, the ZBA really only has control over how many dogs are rolling through that business, not over his other dogs. Because he's allowed, as a matter of right of being a citizen here, that he can have his own dogs. The ZBA's application, the way I understand it, only says how many he can handle as a business owner, and excluding his own dogs. And I don't think the number of dogs that he has that he owns personally is a consideration, fortunately or unfortunately, for, that goes into the calculation at any given time.
Yeah, I think you're right, Teresa. I think the special permit is focused on his dog training, dog walking, and occasional dog boarding company.
Right, it's dogs from which he's gonna make money by taking care of them,
Yeah.
and not his own dogs, which are just gonna cost him money.
Oh, right, but the dogs that he boards can't exceed 3 dogs at a time.
Yes, that's right, right,
Okay.
because that's part of the business,
Right.
right? So
Yeah,
if he's boarding dogs.
He's not asking for a kennel permit. But
So it still feels superfluous to me, but if the other 4 of you are inclined to do it, then we can certainly send the note over.
I guess I'm okay with not doing it if it's a kennel, if it's over 3, but I would like to check on if it can run with the owner, because I do think non-conforming to non-conforming, the way it's written now, it doesn't state it has to stay the same or be in the same, use area, so it could grow to a kennel. Because now this is gonna be non-conforming in that house area. So who's to say he might sell it and then it becomes a kennel, because now that's non-conforming too.
No, they'd have to apply for a variance. It's not allowed in that district.
It wouldn't be non-conforming to non-conforming?
No, it's an expansion.
No, because a kennel is not non-conforming. He has to get a use variance for a kennel.
So because he's going for a variance, it's not considered non-conforming what he's doing now? His home business is considered a variance?
No, special permit.
Okay,
He's applying for a special permit.
I'm just trying to understand this. So a special permit and a non-conforming to non-conforming is also a special permit. When I read it, if you get a
But
variance
he's not-
and want to
there's
extend
nothing
it.
there that's non-conforming. If he gets a special permit, that's not non-conforming. He has a special permit to allow that use.
So now he has allowed use.
Right. Well, no, allowed by special permit.
Yep.
It's not allowed by right, it's allowed by special permit.
So if he wants to go to a kennel, he has to go to a variance?
So just let me know. Do you want me to send a letter?
Well, Amy's now maybe saying no on that issue, but the special permit, I don't think she's decided on that. I really believe that the law prohibits us from, singling out industries with respect to whether a special permit can run with the land or not. My memory is that, Copeland and Page was pretty clear that you gotta do all of them or none of them, because we
Yeah,
wanted to do it,
Yeah?
but, and we couldn't. We
So
were-
maybe we can get that for the next
Right.
meeting.
Can you
Yeah.
forward me the email?
I'll reissue it to all of you, but you had extensive conversations about this, and then
Yeah.
you were talking about various businesses of would it apply, wouldn't it apply, do you wanna put that burden on those businesses, do you not want to?
Right,
And that's how you arrived at that you didn't wanna pursue it as a
Right.
zoning amendment.
right. I mean, I wouldn't be adverse to sending it over,
And the
but,
ZBA wasn't in favor of
it's-
it either, because we had talked to both, or I had talked to both boards at your request.
Okay, I guess I'd want to reread that.
okay. So we good?
As long as it can't be more than 3 dogs at the variance, I'm good.
Well, in all honesty, so what happens to the Saturday night or weekend, that, it's a long weekend and he has 6 dogs? Like, what happens? Like, the neighbor has to report him and then it goes to Bob and then
Yeah, well,
he has
they
to
would-
apply
on
to be a
weekends,
kennel?
On weekends, people will call the police,
Police.
because, Bob's not available. So
Okay.
they would call the police, and then the police would, report it to Bob, and then he would go out and, check on it.
Okay.
I mean, at the end of the day, the fact of the matter is, whether it's written in the decision or not, if he's gonna take in 4 or 5 dogs, he's gonna take in 4 or 5 dogs,
Right.
right? It's just,
Yeah.
whether, he knows what he's applied for, he knows what he's getting, he'll understand the decision, whether it's written in there or not, that he can only have 3 dogs, which I'm sure they'll write it in there.
Well, I mean,
But whether it's
you're
written there or
assuming
not,
it's
it's-
gonna get approved. I mean,
Yeah,
the-
But let's just make that
the
assumption,
closest-
just,
The closest to butter, has submitted a letter, asking for it not to be approved.
So, you know,
very concerned
the
about
residents
Right,
close
so-
to there
who
can
works
show
from
up at the
home
meeting.
Yeah.
and,
Yeah, and I,
concerned about, parking dogs.
right, and that I
So
can
maybe it'd
understand.
be good for the planning board to write a letter, we don't want more than 3 dogs. I don't know, it's just,
But at the end of the day, the fact of the matter is, you put it in there, you don't put it in there. If he wants to have 5 dogs, he's gonna have 5 dogs until the neighbor calls the police and then they shut it down again. You know, that's like,
right, as long as he knows he can only
It's-
have 3 dogs.
it's like belt and suspenders approach to special permitting. So what do you wanna do? That's, I mean, this is your request, you want.
Right, I guess I'm good, the more, I mean, the condition I wanted more was that it went with the owner, so, and if we can't do
Right,
that, then.
that's the harder one, and I wouldn't disagree with that. I really wouldn't, but I really think that if we did that, we would be running afoul of some pretty standard law. So,
So
which
at
we
the
don't wanna
next
do.
meeting, let's talk about it when we have the letter.
Right, or
Yeah.
even
Okay.
if someone finds it this week, the email, I'd like to read it, because when I read these packets, it makes it sound like you can do it, and
Right,
they came from Central Mass Planning, so.
right. Yeah, well, I defer back to Coleman and Page. Anything else?
I think that's it.
Good.
Do you want to make, are you all set, Kathy? All right,
Okay,
make a
some-
motion to adjourn the meeting?
Is there a second?
Second.
Before we vote on that, I just want to say thank you. We did a lot of work tonight. You guys did a great job. Thank you, and thanks for letting me look a little bit on the DRC membership. I just want to make sure I understood what you were saying.
Oh, yeah,
So,
thanks.
excellent job, you guys. All right, we're adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.